Hello and welcome back to CADCAMCAN.com, your online learning resource for E4D. This module will teach you how to use Lee Culp's proven techniques for artfully characterizing posterior restorations such that you have a beautiful, harmonious restoration for your patient. Let's look and listen as Lee teaches us his technique.
Hi, I'm Lee Culp. Today we're going to go through a very simple technique for staining a posterior restoration. So we have milled our restoration out of an Empress multi-block. So most of the layering's already in the crown. So we're just going to enhance it by characterization stain. So I have touched up the anatomy with a high-speed carbide burr just to deepen it a little bit more than what the milling burrs can do. And we've got our colors out, and we're going to just apply the colors to enhance the look of this final restoration. So on my palette, what I have now, and these are my standard colors. I've got the gingival color of whatever the restoration should be. I've got orange for the occlusal, brown for the occlusal, and white for the occlusal, and then with my glaze. So it's those simple colors that I can do almost anything with a milled restoration. So if we look down at the palette, this is our glaze, this is brown, this is orange, this is white, and this is our gingival color, and this is our glaze liquid. So one of the most important things we want to do when glazing a restoration is make sure we mix up the glaze correctly. So the glaze should be thicker, almost like a honey-like substance, and it should go on fairly thicker also, so we get a good glaze. So I'm going to take a little bit of the glaze liquid on the tip end of my brush, and I'm going to mix it with the glaze paste. One of the key areas you want to focus on is just getting a good mixture of the glaze. So as we see the glaze kind of pulling up, kind of stretching up, that's a perfect consistency for our glaze. The brown stain we want to leave a little bit thicker. The orange stain I'm going to add a little bit of the glaze liquid to. And the white stain, I'm going to be adding a little bit of glaze liquid too also to thin it down just a bit. With the gingival, the same. I want to thin that down actually just a little bit more so it mixes in with the glaze very, very nicely. So those are our mixtures. Again, glaze, brown, orange, white, and the gingival color. That's all you need for a posterior restoration. So I'm going to move back to my restoration. So my restoration is already in a multi-block, and I've already touched the anatomy, so you can see the fissures that I've just touched. So I really just went through my primary anatomy from here and here, outlining my primary anatomy just a little bit because the burrs, the milling burrs, just don't get down in there that deep. So the first thing we're going to do is apply the glaze. So I use two brushes. This is a number 1 brush. It's a little bit bigger, so I can get the glaze applied. And we want to get the glaze on the brush so you can actually see it. It's basically in a little ball on the end of the brush. That's about the right consistency. That's about the right amount of glaze that we want to apply to the surface. So we're going to go on the outside first, applying our glaze. From the incisal edge all the way down to the margin. And we go on the occlusion last. So all the way to the margin. And again, we don't want to thin the glaze out. We just want to spread it around just a little bit. Now we have fully covered the coronal portion of the crown. Now we're ready to go to the occlusal. So one of the goals is we don't want to fill our anatomy up with glaze. So we're going to start in the center and pull out towards the cuss tips, but not filling in. We don't want to just fill in all of our anatomy with glaze. So again, we want an amount of glaze on the brush, and then we want to go from the center and pull out towards the cuss tips. Now, as you can see, it's starting to fill in the anatomy a little bit. So I want to go in with my brush and start removing a little bit of that glaze out of the fossa. So it looks something like that. The next step is to go with our gingival color. So this is my gingival color. And we're going to be painting this color very, very gently on the top of the glaze around the gingival. Since it is a multi-block and the gingival color is already into the block color, we don't need to do a lot of gingival coloration. I tend to spend a lot more time on the occlusal of a posterior tooth because that's what we see when we look in someone's mouth. We don't really see the interproximals, we don't see the buccal or the lingual, but we do see the occlusal surface. And even though we've got a three-dimensional ceramic on our occlusal surface, we can enhance the aesthetics and the look of 3 dimensions by the additive of colors. So the orange colors, warm colors, tend to move away from a light source. And as we take the orange and the brown, it will make the crown look deeper. And then when we put the white on the cuss tips, it will make the cuss tips come off of the crown to even enhance a more 3-dimensional look, even though the crown is 3-dimensional. So now I'm going to go to the orange color. And in the central fossa, again, everything is an enhancement. We don't really want to see a lot of orange. We want to enhance the occlusal coloration. Into the deeper areas. You can see how that's starting to make the central fossa look a little bit deeper. Now I'm going to go to a 00 brush. You can see that the tip of this brush is almost like a needle. This is the brush I'm going to use for the brown stain. And again, the brown stain is just to enhance depth. You can see right on the end of the brush, a tiny little bit. And just into a couple of areas. The goal is not to paint every groove brown, just barely to again enhance the color. The last thing we'll do is to add a little bit of white to the cuss tips. Now the goal with white is to not see white spots. It's really not to see white at all. It's to see an increase in value, an increase in brightness. So my white stain is mixed fairly thin. And I'm going to go to my cuss tips. Marginal ridges. Keeping it very spread out, very diffuse. And then down into the triangular ridges, just a little bit. Again, just to accent the heightened areas. So that completes the application of glaze and stain. Once we fire it, we'll show it to you again and see what it looks like once the glaze liquid is evaporated off and we've got our final sheen. But again, it's using very simple techniques, the gingival color, orange, brown, and white, to achieve excellent aesthetics in the posterior of the mouth with a milled restoration. So we're going to fire this, and we'll come back in just a second and show you what the final crown looks like. Thank you.
Be sure to join Lee in one of his fabulous hands-on courses in Dallas in order to continue your E4D journey. In order to learn more or to register, click here now.